Do you ever overcomplicate your problems? Welcome to this edition of Tuesday Talks with Twyla. I think this is something that we all, maybe inadvertently, do without even realizing it. And the reason we do it, we overcomplicate things, is because it can be a way of avoiding solving the problem. Because when we overcomplicate it, it's the things that we think and say about it that make it vague or make it like so big that it's unsolvable. And we do this and then we're like, oh, it's so big, it's impossible, right? There's no way to solve it because it's kind of like that all or nothing thinking. And we just pile on vagueness and confusion. And then it's just easier to be like, well, I don't know how to solve that. It's so complicated, right? So I want to give you a couple of tips on how to simplify it so you can figure out exactly what the simple problem is that we can find a simple solution for. So the first part of this is anytime you have anything that you're trying to solve is to like take a look at all of the details about it, right? Like there's probably this whole story we're telling about the thing. And we really want to get curious about all the stuff that we're saying about it or thinking about it. And a good way to do this is to just write it all down, kind of do a thought download, just dump everything out of our brain and on a clean sheet of paper. It could be in the notes in your phone, whatever it is. But get all of the thoughts, the stories that we're telling ourselves about the problem, get it all written down. And then we want to take a look at it and we want to ask how much of this is actual facts about the problem and how much of it is just a story I'm telling or an opinion about it, right? Because there's probably more story than facts. And when we can tease out the facts, we can start drilling down into what the actual problem is, which is the simple part of the problem that it can find a simple solution, right? And a lot of times what you'll find when you do this is some finger pointing and you're blaming things on things outside of you, which means then you can't solve the problem. So you want to be looking for that as part of your story that you're telling. Well, if he would just do that differently, or if that person wasn't like that, right? So notice where you're pointing the finger, where you're putting responsibility outside of you. And if your goal is to solve a problem of someone else doing or saying or being a certain way, that's the wrong problem to solve, right? We can't change other people, but we can change how we react to them. We can change how we show up. We can change how we think about it. That's where all of our power is. And as soon as we're pointing the finger or blaming something on someone else, there's no solution that we can create. So that's where we'll use that to add to the confusion, to overcomplicate the problem so that there's no solution and we don't even have to try to solve it. It's just something, it becomes something that we just complain about, that we just get frustrated about. But then what that creates for us is that state of frustration, is that state of complaining and misery, right? Because that's what we're talking about, that's what we're thinking about, that's what we're feeling, right? And we're just wallowing in all of that. Now, if we have a complicated problem and we want to try to solve it, then we need to tease all of this out and we need to clean it up so we're looking at the actual facts and then simplifying it so we can figure out what we need to do to solve the problem, right? So notice all of these aspects of the story that you have about this problem. And when you really look through it, when you dump it all out onto the paper and you actually tease through it and you're looking just for facts, like you might have a whole paper of stuff written down. And if you took a highlighter and went back and highlighted the facts, you might have just like a tiny bit of the stuff highlighted. And that's when you know, okay, I've been overcomplicating this problem because the facts are this. The problem that I want to solve is actually this. And when we can tease it down to that level, then we can say, this is the problem to solve, and this is maybe some potential solutions. It becomes very clear what the problem actually is without all the drama and all the story and all of this overcomplication that's unnecessary. And then we have simplified the actual problem, and then we can start brainstorming possible solutions, which, if you have a simple problem, you'll have some simple solutions. You'll be able to see that, okay, and it might not be like where we know exactly what the solution is, but we know that, okay, if this is the problem I'm trying to solve, here's some ideas on how to solve it. I'm going to try this one first. If this doesn't work, I'm going to go to that one. If that one doesn't work, I'm going to go to that one, right? But it gets your brain thinking in a way of problem solving. But when you're caught up in this whole overcomplicated story, you're just caught up in the drama of it all. You're just caught up in the blaming and the excuses and the vagueness, and we just kind of like morph it and morph it and morph it into this bigger over dramatization, over complicated problem unnecessarily. Because how do we feel when we're doing that? We feel awful. We might even feel like, right, paralyzed, or like there's just like impossible solution, like there's just no way around, like this is just the way it is. But then we feel miserable about it. And we're creating all of that for ourselves, right? And a lot of times it might be in camaraderie with somebody, right? Like you get together with your bestie and it's like you complain about your boss. And it's just this whole big story about this. Like, well, if I want to create something different, I have to be thinking something different. So we can take a look at this over dramatization, this over complicated problem, and start weeding it down and teasing out the actual facts of what is there underneath this whole story, underneath all of this drama, over out of all of the really, it's kind of an intentional confusion, right? Because the more you confuse your brain, the less you have to actually do. Because when you overcomplicate the problem and there's no solution, your brain's like, okay, right? It's totally fine with that because it doesn't want to have to take action anyways. Your brain is just fine, just wallowing in the over dramatization. It's like, yep, there's no solution, nothing we can do about it. Let's just sit and complain, right? And so when you start simplifying it, then it's like, okay, there's actually this simple problem that has a simple solution, and we have to take action to try to solve the problem. And then there's an action piece. So we have to do something other than just wallowing in this over dramatization, right? And just feeling miserable. We actually have to. But when you actually think about a simple problem and finding a simple solution and taking action to solve it, that actually does feel better. It feels more productive. It feels more like purposeful, right? It feels good to solve a problem, to figure out a solution and actually solve the problem. It feels good. But we don't think that when we're stuck in the story, right? When we're stuck in the complaining and the misery of whatever blame and finger pointing we're doing. We're living in that misery. And then we don't have to do anything. We just have to sit there and complain, right? But actually solving the problem feels really good. And figuring out and coming to it with a more productive stance. This is the simple problem. What are some simple solutions? What can I try to see if this is the solution? And if that doesn't work, I'm going to try something different. And just coming to it from that very productive, very simplified, this is the problem, these are the possible solutions, and taking action towards solving the problem, the very simplified problem. It's like, oh, well, when I strip that all away, this is pretty easy. And maybe I don't know exactly what the answer is, but I can come up with ideas. I can start getting my brain working on a solution, because your brain loves to solve problems. It loves to find answers. It will look and seek ideas and ways, and it's that creative part of our brain that is the growth and expansion that it's designed to do. It loves that. But it also loves just like staying confused. Like there's both parts of the brain, right? The one part will just love living in that story and in the confusion and in the finger pointing. And that's just the lazy man brain that's just like, yeah, let's just sit back here and complain, right? But then the other part of our brain is, let's solve this problem. And then that feels very good. And we don't realize sometimes how miserable we are creating, like all the misery we create by confusing and complicating the problem. We don't realize what that feels like because it's uncomfortable, but also our brain is like, yeah, it's choosing that at the time. It's like, no, we're not doing that. We don't want to just wallow over here in this misery of complaining and finger pointing and blaming, right? That's not that's not how I want to experience this issue. I actually want to peel away all of the drama, tease out the facts, find the specific simplified problem, and then find a solution for it. And what would that look like? And that can feel, right, motivating. That can feel exciting. That feels productive. That feels like accomplishment, right? It's very rewarding to do that. Even if you find the simple problem and you don't know the exact solution and you have to try a few things before you actually find the solution that works. Even that process that you might consider like mini fails or setbacks, like, oh, I thought this was going to be the answer and it wasn't, right? And just keep working on it. You just keep trying it. But they're simple solutions to the simple problem, right? Simple things to try because your brain will come up with all kinds of ideas if you give it the opportunity to. If you strip away all of the drama and overcomplication, it's like, oh, when I just look at this, my brain can come up with like all these ideas. It actually like clears the clouds so that you can come up with how many ideas. It probably is not going to be like, oh, and maybe it is like, oh, once I, dial down this simple problem, this is the simple solution and there is just one solution. But if you have to be like, well, I'm not quite sure what the solution is, and you get your brain going on it, right? And it's just going to come up with all kinds of ideas. And that is a great way to use our brain to solve a problem. So notice if that's what your brain does, that it goes into, and sometimes we just slip into this, and sometimes it's based on, people around us that that's just kind of their normal go-to, and we can slip into that too. But our brains are, wired for survival and efficiency and conserving energy. So our brain is going to want to be like, yeah, let's just sit back here and not know what to do. Right? Let's just, pour on more confusion and keep it vague and like there's no way or there's, the all or nothing. Notice the all or nothing language. Just this will never work or there's never a solution or there's, all of the very like over exaggerated like story we're telling about the thing, like how our brain just wants to morph it into this very vague, very ambiguous, unsolvable problem because then we don't have to solve it. We just sit back and complain and be miserable and be like, this is so big and I don't know what to do with this, right? So it can be the natural tendency, but also we have this very smart part of our brain that can use this technique to take a look at any overcomplicated problem and simplify it down so that we can find a simple solution and we can take action to actually solve the problem. And when you start doing this, you're teaching your brain that when a problem comes up, that we start simplifying it right away. Because if our brain starts to like try to overcomplicate it so that we don't have to find a solution, it's like, no, but like, what is actually the fact here? Right? You can start peeling away when there's only a couple of layers as opposed to maybe a problem you have right now that's morphed into this gigantic with lots of different layers and you're going to unload an entire sheet of paper getting the whole story out, right? You're teaching your brain that when we have a problem, we look for the fact right away. We look for the simple problem from the very beginning before our brain gets the opportunity to overcomplicate it, or our coworker or our boss or whatever, whoever it is that usually overcomplicates things. Like we know how to tease out the fact and simplify the problem from the very beginning. You can teach yourself that. So that's your new natural tendency, to simplify it from the very beginning. because it might come to you in a over exaggerated way, or your brain might, start offering little by little and you're like, nope, and you stop it earlier on, or you stop it after 5 layers instead of 10, right? Or maybe after one or two, or you don't even get to that point, right? Like a problem comes up and you just drill right into the fact and the simplicity of it, and then you start looking for solutions right from the very beginning. And then you spare yourself all of that drama and misery and that complaining and that like just wallowing in the misery of an unsolvable problem. It's a very uncomfortable place to be, and it's unnecessary. We don't have to live in that state or experience that misery of an overcomplicated problem and just kind of stay stuck there. We don't have to do that at all. We don't have to create an overcomplicated problem, right? And once you kind of figure out this process and you put it into place a couple of times, you're like, oh, I'm not even going to let my brain go there. I'm not going to let any problem get overcomplicated. Not that one might not come to you that way, right? From a coworker or a boss, but just know, like, okay, I know exactly what to do with this. I know how to simplify this down so that I can find a simple solution and solve the problem and make it go away, right? Because isn't that the end goal, is that whatever this problem is, that it just goes away, that we solve it, right? That we figure out the answer and we move on. We don't live in this. We don't experience this every day or all day, every day, right? Like sometimes these things are like these looming clouds that just drain our energy because we don't take the time to figure out what the simple problem is that we could solve and make the whole thing go away. We just feel like it's part of like our experience. Like this is just something I live with. But why do we? Usually because we've overcomplicated it to the point where it's just this unsolvable thing we have to live with, that we have to put up with. But if you get really curious about it and you decide to like, okay, let's take a look at this and see if we can find the simple part of this and just unload everything and then tease out the facts. And then say, okay, here's the actual simplified problem that I need to solve to make all of this whole page of drama, just go away. How amazing is that? So put this into place. Try this. I have a couple of things that like I've noticed, like when something like it'll come in as this thought of like and it's the all or nothing. Like nobody wants this. Nobody's going to want to do this. Just things like that that just make it so ambiguous and so vague and so unsolvable. It's like, no, actually, like, right? Like if I simplify this down, what is my first goal? And then what is the next goal, right? And how do I solve this problem? And then if I get that problem solved, but I don't need to solve the problem of this whole thing. I need to solve this thing first. And then once I solve that, then I can move on to the next thing, right? But then I'm just simplifying it so I'm solving one simple problem, not this gigantic thing. It's kind of like if you have a very big project and you're looking at it like it's got all these steps. Okay, but what's the first step you need to take, right? You can't start and jump in the middle. You can't, jump to the end. You have to figure out the whole picture. So what is the very first thing I would need to do, right? Like if you learned in high school, like how to write an essay or how to write a paper, right? You usually started with, well, first you picked your topic. What are you going to write about? And then you did an outline. So you did a high level outline overview of everything you're going to cover in the whole thing, but it's high level bullet points, right? So there's a process for that. But you don't they never taught you to like take a sheet of paper and be like, write this full story out without having any topic decided, without having any outline decided, right? Because then it's very unorganized and you're jumping all around. But if you can look at it on the high level and say, okay, what's the first thing I need to decide? What would be the first step? It's a lot simpler to solve this first problem and then move on to the next one. And when you simplify it like that, now you have exactly what you need to work on and not this big ambiguous problem, this overcomplicated thing that you can't solve. It's solvable. It's simple. And we can get creative and come up with ideas and figure out, how can I use this? How can I use this tool I just gave you today for anything? Anything that I would like to solve or resolve or make go away, how can I simplify it so that I can find a result for this as opposed to just living with it, putting up with it, right? Having it loom over us or, follow us around like this dark cloud. How can I take a look at this differently? How can I simplify it? And how can I find a solution to make it go away? All right. I'm excited to hear how this goes for you. It has been something that I've put in just on little things like, but if there was a simple problem in here, what might it be? Right. And just, so I don't always do a whole page, to get all of the story and drama about it. I just go, okay, what would be like, how could I tease out like the simplified problem out of this? It's like, okay, I would start here. Like that's the first thing I need to worry about. Okay. Then I can figure that out and start with that and set all the other decisions or all the other issues aside and let's start here with this simple problem and find a simple solution. And then we can move on to the bigger picture, right? So let me know how this goes for you. I'm excited for you to put this into place and I will see you next week.